Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Geeks and Noobs podcast, your home for the all-inclusive community of fandom. And we have a very special guest with us once again, CPG. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much
What's
for
up?
joining us.
What's going on?
CPG is here because he has an incredible theory about She-Hulk episode 2 and She-Hulk in general that I just had to ask him to come on and talk about. But before we get to that, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Kel, aka Ben Riley, aka Scarlet Spider, right there. And I am, of course, Super Beard. Thank you, Kel. You could have left it on, no big deal.
Yeah.
But I don't know how you would have sounded. But as always, if you're watching this on Twitch, please hit that heart button and give us a nice follow. You'll get yourself a dancing penguin. If you feel so inclined, please subscribe. It's just $5 a month, or you could use your Amazon Prime subscription, and that'll be free. Jeffrey Bezos will pay for it for you. We're also live on Facebook on the Geeks and Noobs podcast Facebook page. We're live on YouTube on TGN Networks. We are also live on the new streaming service Trovo, Trovo. So all of those avenues to reach us, to get your comments in, we can see them all. So please make sure you join in the conversation. We would love to hear from you. Now, that being said, before we get into She-Hulk episode 2, as our thumbnail so elegantly shows, Kel has some breaking news that he is going to be breaking for us today instead of myself. So Kel, take it away.
All right. So this isn't really that big for breaking news. I found out about it the other day, and apparently some people have already made comments about it, posts about it, and everything like that. But for those who are not in the know, big news for Across the Spider-Verse, the sequel for Into the Spider-Verse, the Sony animated film that was fantastic in my opinion, and it just was an all-out fun ride for a Spider-Man film, especially for an animated one. Now, the big news is that yes, we're getting the Spot, who's going to be the potential villain in it, and everything like that. But thanks to some leak images to the Into the Spider-Verse, or I'm sorry, Across the Spider-Verse Trouble game. You remember Trouble with the automatic popper and everything. On the box art itself, Ben Riley has been seen on the box, so that's why I'm in my Ben Riley cosplay in all its glory. Ben Riley has always been my favorite, at least my favorite costume of Spider-Man. I mean, it's just so simple, so simplistic, but it's just phenomenal. And that's why people, when they talk about Scarlet Spider, 90% of the time they're referring to the the hooded look from the early 90s, the Clone Saga and all that mess. But also you have Kane Parker, who was the second Scarlet Spider with the black and the red. And that costume is great, but still, I got to give it up to the OG Scarlet Spider. But I cannot wait for Into the Spider-Verse now. I was excited before, but now I am over the moon and into space for it now. And hopefully I can get the actual suit updated before the premiere. So that is my goal right now, is to update this suit to a professional cosplay suit that you can order on a website to go to the premiere in.
Well, I, for one, am looking forward to it. Ben Riley, I think, is the only good thing to come out of Clone Saga.
Yes.
Funny enough, if you've seen my TikToks lately, you might notice that there's like the paneling is gone in my room, and part of it because I had a leak in my wall and I'm having to replace everything. And unfortunately, that my carpet got wet from the leak, and all my comic books were safe except for one.
Ooh.
And that one that got ruined was a reprint given out on Free Comic Book Day of the first issue of Clone Saga, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm good. I'm all right."
Yeah, as much as I do love Ben Riley, that saga was a hot mess. And unfortunately, really, the writers at Marvel who take on a Ben Riley story or storyline just don't know what to do with them. And it just breaks my heart.
Didn't they recently make him a villain? Didn't he
Yeah.
turn on
Yeah.
everybody or something?
Yeah,
he's a villain.
Spider-Man Beyond, they turned him into a brand new Spider clone villain. And I'm just like, didn't we just do that just a few years ago with him being the new Jackal?
Yeah.
I mean,
I feel
I
like
don't.
anything Spider-Man and clone related shouldn't be a thing anymore. We should have let that die in
It needs to go
1999.
away. Ben Riley can do his own thing.
Yeah.
If you don't feel like giving him a series, that's fine. But when he appears, just let him be like, "Hey, Spidey, I see you need help. I'm here to help." That's it.
Hmm.
He doesn't need to be a villain. You don't need to try to make him a more compelling character because he's compelling enough. Like I said, the only good thing to come out of Clone Saga. So seeing that we're going to get a traditional Scarlet Spider in this movie makes me very happy. And I'm
Yes.
very curious to see how it plays out with the rest of the Spider-Man. Because every other Spider person is technically,
And
even though there might not, like, obviously one was Gwen Stacy, one was Spider Ham. Like, they're not all Peter Parker, but they're all the Peter Parker technically of their universe.
yeah.
Like, and so Ben Riley being like, no, I'm not the Peter Parker of my universe. I'm a clone, or maybe I'm the original. Like, let's not go down that road. But yeah.
Yeah, please.
Uh, it was asked, do you think they'll remove him from all the comic books? I don't think so. I just think they need to stop using him in a terrible way. That's all.
Yeah.
And Future says they killed me when they turned Ben Riley. Yeah, I don't get
Oh
it.
yeah,
I
they did
don't.
me too.
It's like
Nope.
making. It's like it made sense when they made Jason Todd the Red Hood, because even then he wasn't necessarily bad. He just felt like here's a better way to get justice. It's a more Punisher esque version of justice.
Yeah.
Like when you make these heroes, especially when they're tied to such shitty things like a clone saga, and there have been other clones, like in other series, like Marvel and DC have done this. It's a trope at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why does they always have to turn evil? It's the evil twin thing. It's the old sci-fi novel evil twin trope that gets turned into a clone trope. They did it in Spider-Man in the 70s. In that show, I won't use any other adjectives.
Oh, you're referring to the live action '70s show?
Yeah, they
I
actually did a
remember
clone
that
episode.
episode. Yeah, I remember that
Mr.
episode.
Sunday Movies does a not phenomenal Caravan of Garbage episode on that episode.
Those
And
guys are great.
I love them to death. They're awesome. I would give anything to talk to them for an hour.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I just getting them on to talk for an hour would be phenomenal. Um but yeah, I just like so even like and the thing was what's funny about the Clone Saga is I almost feel like when they came up with the story, they watched that old 70s episode. Like they watched it and been like, we can do something with it.
Mhm.
Because it is a doctor similar to the Jackal who
Yes.
makes the clone
Hmm.
and all it's very much in line with
It
the
is
base
exactly the
the
same.
core of the story. And I'm all like, so we get one of the shittiest stories besides One More Day in Spider-Man history.
Oh yeah. One More Day's the worst.
Oh,
Yeah, and like how bad are you to beat out Clone Saga? But so we get one of the shittiest Spider-Man stories ever. And it's not even an original story. It is
yeah.
taken from a Spider-Man, which by the way, all the writers that were on the TV show in the 70s, none of them read the comics, and they were actually told not to read the comics. Because Marvel actually didn't have the rights to help produce that show. So it was kind of like with I hate to say his name, Bryan Singer, that trash bag of a human.
Yeah.
When he first did X-Men, if you were caught with a comic book on set and were like less than like a star on the movie, you were fired immediately. If you were a star with a comic book on set, they would literally confiscate it from you and burn it. He wanted no comic book references at all, and he wanted no comic books on set for that first
That
movie.
that makes a lot of sense. It speaks to the fact, like I've always been one of those people that where the 2000 X-Men movie has like so much importance to like the evolution of superhero film in general, because other than Batman there really wasn't anything in that genre going on at the time, and after that came Daredevil and then Spider-Man and then the MCU pretty much.
Blade.
The thing that I've always said about that movie though is that the reason why Bryan Singer's X-Men movies can stand out despite not being very true is not the right word, but true to the source material, for lack of a better way to say it, is that they're very, very good sci-fi movies, but they're not very good superhero movies.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. I agree. Like they don't hold up. Like watching them back now, I'm just like, ugh. This does not hold up.
under the lens of the MCU, they're terrible.
Yeah, like and that's what I mean. Like I've watched them because they're on Disney Plus now.
Yeah,
and I was like,
yeah,
oh,
so did
cool.
I, yeah.
I'll go back and watch it. I'm like, oh, this is horrible. Now, Future brings up: do you think the MCU could use parts of the Clone Saga and make it work? They've been pretty successful at using parts of stories that weren't received well. I'm sure they could, but they've technically already quasi touched on that with No Way Home, having multiple Spider-Men.
Yeah.
You don't want to then rehash that, but with clones. So I don't think they'll touch it. Plus, if you've noticed, they may pull obscure characters in. Like we got Frogman coming up soon in She-Hulk.
Yeah.
Like, why? I'm excited. He's like Kite Man for Marvel. But like they don't use shitty stories to base anything off of. And base is being used very loosely here because they're just inspirations. Like Age of Ultron has nothing to do with the Age of Ultron story from the comics at all.
Either one of them. Yeah.
First successful comic book movie was Howard the Duck, where Leah Thompson slept with a duck.
Yes.
And that pedophile was a villain.
He still is a villain.
It's a shame that guy turned out to be such a horrible piece of shit because I liked him.
Right.
He was awesome.
Man.
He was. Oh, you know his best role to me? Stay Tuned with John Ritter, where he plays the devil.
Oh yes.
I've not seen that.
Oh my god, it's on Amazon. And that movie, as dated as it is, because a lot of the references are very dated, because they get sucked into a satellite, which by the way, the satellite dish is the size of their backyard, because that's how it was back in the day. But like there's like Wayne's World references and stuff. There's all these like dated references. It still holds up though as comedic genius. It's John Ritter, and her name escapes me, but she was the wasn't she in Mork and Mindy? Wasn't she the woman from Mork and Mindy, the one who plays his wife? I think she was. I think she's Mindy from Mork. I don't know, maybe, whatever. Regardless, first of all, it's John Ritter. John Ritter was an amazing guy. Love him to death. And then it's that guy, I don't want to mention him as evil as he was, but stay tuned. It's still to this day is fun to watch, and it's on Amazon Prime for free. So anybody that wants to go check it out because it's just a fun, just get some popcorn, sit back and put your phone away and think of nothing. And if you don't get the references, maybe Google them, but they're very funny. There's like the typical Japanese game show one, like the guy gets hit in the nuts kind of thing. There's a Tom and Jerry reference. There's all these great, but everything's done. So like I said, there's Wayne's World, but everything's done from a hell perspective. Like it's Wayne's World in hell. It's this in hell. Man. Everything in hell. And it's so good. I saw it's Eugene Levy's in it.
Yeah.
As a lower tier demon who turns on him. Like the whole thing. It's just so good. It's so good. Love that movie to death.
It's so early 90s cheese. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's perfect early 90s film. Perfect early 90s film. Gone off on a tangent, but that's fine. Yeah, again, so back to what you're saying. One, Howard the Duck is, I think, a great cult classic shitty film. One of those, the B movie that's so bad it's good. I think that
duck breasts.
Do you want to know something funny? We were talking about X-Men, how they kind of like it was a great sci-fi film and it stood away from comic book movies. It's funny because it did, in a very minuscule way, alter the comics later on. Like they took some stuff from the movies to put into the comics.
The aesthetics for a bit, definitely during Grant Morrison's run.
Blade, of the similar timeline, Blade, when it came out, altered the character completely, and yet the comic books then took the origin from the movies and turned it into the origin in the comic books. So that shows you that in that movie, to this day, the first one still holds up. Again,
Abraham Whistler being in the comic books at all is all from that movie.
Yeah.
Granted, it is still kind of dated. The music is very late 90s. The rave, everything's fashion-wise is very 90s. But that movie holds up to today.
Oh, yeah. I love the first
Blade. Whereas the first X-Men movie definitely does not hold up.
No.
It just doesn't. It does not hold up at all. But later on in this discussion, as we jump into She-Hulk episode 2, there will be a reference to the X-Men. So that is called retention, ladies and gentlemen, and that will keep you hanging on to the conversation. Stick around. Jason says, can't wait to see the new Blade. I agree. I think Mahershala Ali, I don't know if I said that correctly, but I apologize. I think he's going to just kill it. I think that movie's going to be amazing, and the fact that we're already seeing Marvel push the boundaries of their PG-13, and we already know that Deadpool will be a hard R. Moon Knight really pushed those boundaries, had a lot of blood in it. She-Hulk is pushing the boundaries of what they can and cannot do. Captain America fucks is a perfect example, which, by the way, CPG, that image you sent me is fucking hilarious. So I do feel like we're going to get a more gritty Blade movie. The fact that we've been name dropping vampires in multiple things, like Loki and other things. The fact that he appeared at the end of Eternals when Black Knight was touching the sword. There's a lot of build up to a version of the Midnight Suns, and again, a very kind of aggressive. Speaking of Eternals, that will also come up a little bit later on, right involved with that earlier retention little tease I gave. But let's jump into episode 2. First off, I didn't get to talk to you, CPG, about episode 1. So give me just your overall on the first 2 episodes.
Well, I thought the first episode was very good. I think it's exactly what a She-Hulk TV show should be. It definitely takes a lot of stuff from the comic books and brings it straight to the forefront of like what exactly her method of telling her story is. The breaking the fourth wall is there, which is great to see. The retooling of the origin fits perfectly because it makes her more heroic. Because in the comic books, she just got a simple blood transfusion from Bruce and then winds up becoming She-Hulk. This, she, was trying to save him from the car wreck and then winds up getting his blood in her system. So I think it kind of retools that a bit in a really positive way. Anticipated the pinhole thinking on that the social media outlets and stuff were going to say about it. Thought that Miss Marvel was going to be bad. This has seemed to be ultimately worse so far. And then the second episode expanded on stuff in the first one that I thought was really good. They are really going what I've seen. What they're calling it it's a very horny forward show, which it seems to be what they're going with some of the stuff. There's just a lot of like they're taking a little bit more risque approaches to stuff. They're really this is a fine line between the fantastical squeaky clean Marvel stuff that's out there that Disney's kind of kept that way, and Netflix and kind of what was going on over there. Like I don't see She-Hulk not being able to fit into something that is in the vein of Daredevil or Jessica Jones, which are going to continue on Disney Plus from what we know.
Yeah.
So it seems I overall I just think it's great, and the bigger implications for the universe seem to be kind of coming to the forefront.
Absolutely. Now, Jason asked 2 questions here. One, who do you think the villain for Blade will be? It's hard to tell at this point without even the script. I don't even think the script is finished completely, so hard to say. There is rumors that Anthony Starr will play Dracula, so maybe, who knows? But I don't. Those rumors came from unreliable sources, so don't take that with a Mount Everest grain of salt. Now, the other question though is something that I want to bring up. It's a video that I made at 3:45 in the morning Eastern Standard Time after watching the episode. And this is something I was going to bring up a little bit later, but the question's out there, so let's bring it up now. It doesn't really affect the rest of the episode anyways. Is the fourth wall breaking a Hulk power? And here's why I say that, and I said this in my video. In the first episode, when she breaks the fourth wall around the Hulk, he notices. And he looks at her funny, like, who are you talking to? However, in this episode, she has a whole full-blown conversation with herself and us, the audience, right around Holloway and people in the hallways, and nobody bats an eye. Nobody notices. Now, we know that gamma radiation does affect multiple dimensions. They've talked about that in Endgame. They talked about that in Infinity War, how gamma radiation is a 4th or 5th dimension of power or radiation. It affects the time. It can affect they use gamma radiation to literally travel through time and all that stuff. So, is one of those abilities the ability to break the fourth wall, to break the dimensional barrier and speak to people outside of the MCU proper? And also, I say, and to think about this, at least in the comics, the Hulk can see ghosts and the astral plane You know, he can. There's a lot of things he can do just besides just smash and heal. So are they kind of playing it up that the fourth wall breaking is kind of a residual power of the gamma radiation?
It's an interesting point to bring up because it would also explain why the Hulk was able to snap and didn't die. If the gamma radiation is something that ties him to multiple universes or realities, dimensions, however they want to put it, it would almost like the power of the stones could, through traveling through his body, be disseminated across multiple universes and not just ours or the MCU proper. Um, so that's why he didn't die. It seems like a really good way to kind of like, you know, it crippled Thanos when he did it, and it killed Tony Stark. But Bruce survived because there's this kind of like basically using the green door. You could use
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
as what bridges the different dimensions, and then he was able to disseminate that energy across multiple planes of existence to basically preserve his own well-being and the well-being of his universe. I think that's an awesome theory. I think that's really cool.
And
Yeah.
Kel, I'll throw it to you that like he also, through Jen's blood and gamma radiation, was able to heal from something that should be unhealable.
Yeah.
So again, that could be pulling energy from not just our dimension, but other dimensions as well. So I'll throw it to you with that as well.
Yeah, I definitely think there's definitely has to be some kind of relative I can't think today. But yeah, I definitely think there's something going on with the gamma radiation of why she's able to uh, break the fourth wall, and that since Bruce did it or used her blood to help heal his arm, maybe he does have a sensitivity to when she does, and that's why he looked back when she was talking to the audience in that first episode. So yeah, I totally am on board with this theory that gamma radiation has the ability to break the fourth wall for certain people.
It
Because
also, well, yeah, I was to say it also gives you a explanation for this seemingly crazy thing.
yeah,
And now it doesn't explain why Deadpool can do it, but it could be an additional power in his mutation that he's also able
yeah,
to transverse dimensions mentally, but it broke him in a way.
yeah.
At least in the comics, it broke him in a way. Whereas
Yeah.
She-Hulk, because again, they're genetically adept to handle gamma radiation, it doesn't break them mentally, and they're just able to do it. Now the Hulk and Bruce Banner specifically doesn't realize this power as much because remember the Hulk is a separate identity.
Mhm.
And so he's already dealing with having a split personality, a DID issue. And so maybe it's not something he's been able to explore or even realize. Whereas Jen is just Jen.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
just
There's
Jen,
no one else
taller,
there. Yeah.
stronger, and
Yeah.
greener. So it's something for her. And now the one thing we don't know is like we're never really going to see Jen before. Like we got the origin. All we saw of Jen before being a Hulk is the scene in the car. She didn't break
Yeah.
the fourth wall then,
Mhm.
so we don't know if it was something she could do before. I doubt she could. I think it's something that's just come from she realizes she exists on a different plane now with the gamma radiation going through her as she's come to terms with the whole thing. So I mean, and again, who knows how they may never ever explain it ever, but the fact that like I feel like there was that subtle like how did Hulk notice, but nobody else has noticed her talking to seemingly no one and seemingly
Mhm.
looking insane, like a schizophrenic. So Jason says for the rules of breaking the fourth wall, gamma radiation, or be fucking nuts or knucking futs as he put it. But
Yeah.
I'll say fucking nuts. Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, but
Last
going
week-
back to the Deadpool theory, or not the theory, but talking about Deadpool, I mean, a lot of mutants have a secondary mutation in the comics.
Yeah, it's
As
very common.
For the X-Men 92, House of 92 that I've been reading up on, I just found out that Jubilee has a secondary mutation ability that when she actually dies, she resets. As like literally, she travels back in time to be born again and then can go back through her life. And in this point in the comic,
That sucks.
She
Shitty power.
yeah,
Especially for Jubilee.
Yeah.
exactly.
Oh wait, I gotta go be an abused child again.
I got to be
Oh,
a
that's
vampire
awesome.
for that weird time in the early 2010s.
Oh shit, yeah.
Yeah.
That's. I get to live all this again. Fucking great. Thanks.
Yeah. But
The
yeah,
jorts and the trench coats.
Like the worst version of Groundhog's Day ever.
right.
But it's your whole life.
But yeah,
Yeah, I again, I don't know if they'll ever fully touch on it, and I think just the
doubt
subtle
it.
nods. But like, there's so many subtle nods in this show, that it's almost like Marvel's at a point now. It's like, not that they're like telling you that you need to be smart enough to see what's going on. I don't think that's what they're doing, but I think that they're trusting their fans to be smart enough to figure things out instead of
Yeah.
having to spoon feed you everything now. I think
Right.
that there's enough media out there that they develop this universe that you can infer things without it being a Mephisto theory situation from WandaVision. Which, by the way,
God.
that's already come up because the wine she was drinking was the devil's nut or something, or whatever.
Yeah.
The devil's velvet. By the way, great wine out of Washington State. It's a great wine. I've had it. Very good. Has nothing to do with Mephisto. Shut the fuck up.
I think that the writers for the show even came out and said, like, there's no Mephisto in the show, and if you're expecting a Mephisto level cameo at the end or a reveal, you will be sorely disappointed. There isn't one. Don't ask us. Stop talking about it.
The writers for this particular show are beyond amazing.
Yeah,
They are
really
very good at
Yeah.
dropping little things like, and we'll go ahead and jump right to it. So, as the episode, it kicks up, he's dealt with Titania, which, by the way, the viral marketing with Titania right now is brilliant as well.
Especially given her that she's an influencer,
Yeah.
superhuman.
Yeah.
So she has a verified Twitter account already. And then she's out there, like, they had Jamila Jamil in costume go out and poster and spray paint over She-Hulk marketing with Titania. As I thought it was
It's
brilliant.
awesome. It's great.
And I love Jamila Jamil. I will always praise that woman. She's amazing. But so this episode, she's celebrating being the She-Hulk, even though she doesn't want to be called that, which that all goes back to the Smart Hulk comments. Like, Smart Hulk's like, yeah, you don't really get to pick your name. But goes into the bar, as She-Hulk, even though she's reluctant to do so because they're celebrating her, but she immediately gets fired. And honestly, though, like, here's the thing. This is not, and this is somebody who's tried to use this as, oh, there's another bad man in her life. No. He thanked her for winning the case. He thanked her for putting a winning case forward. But from a business perspective, absolutely, as a DA, you cannot have a distraction like that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And that case, rightfully so, got thrown out.
Mhm.
Absolutely, 1,000%. Like, everything in that, if you've watched any legal shows, you're going, yeah, all of that makes sense. So her getting fired, to me, like, he didn't want to fire her.
No,
It
he
wasn't-
thanked her for saving
Yeah.
saving the people from Titania. But it's just the fact that, even though she had the case, one in the bag, the guy from
Holloway.
Holloway, thank you. He got the case thrown out because the juries had sympathy for her because she just saved their lives, and that is
Conflict of interest.
conflict of
Yeah.
interest. Thank you.
I thought that was really good way to get her out of the DA office, because in the comic books she works her way up to the DA's office again as She-Hulk, but she's worked for GLH and K, or GLK and H, in the comic books before. So it makes sense how they were able to kind of bring that in so that she's now working for them, and they just so happen to be the superhuman law division. So it all really, really worked out. I thought that it was a good way to keep it, still with the series with the comics rather.
Yeah, I thought they did a really great job. I liked when she was searching, like, one, Nelson mentioned it earlier, Future, he goes, loved her lock screen on her phone. It was literally Captain America's ass. Great. I did notice that they purposely, when you look at her phone and they show the time, so like on my phone, the date, I don't know if you can see that. The date is on there. The date is underneath. You can barely see it. I have an Alex Wright Avengers image on there. Or Alex Ross, I mean. They purposely had the time but no date. because the timeline is so fluid. They're still trying to like really get it to work together. So I thought that
It's
was
not
smart.
during the blip anymore. I mean,
No.
that was going to be one of the selling points for the show, or was for a long time. So they're like, oh, we're going to
Yeah.
get a first look at what the world was like during the blip, and it's not during the blip. So
No, it
that
takes
was
place
another
after
thing that
Moon Knight.
yeah.
After Moon Knight, after Shang-Chi, and after Eternals. Because it is
Mhm.
after Eternals, we know that because the point that all these dude bros on TikTok have bitched about, why haven't anybody mentioned the giant marble dude out in the middle of the ocean? There it is. While she's looking for jobs, there's a headline article that says, who the hell is the giant man out in the middle of the ocean?
Mhm.
It's so commonplace to have weird shit happen now in the MCU that it's just a side article on like BuzzFeed or some shit about that. Like it's not even like a big story anymore. It's like, oh, okay, whatever. We just got
That's what
back from
Wednesday.
5 years after we had the entire universe blipped away. Who cares about a marble statue in the middle of the ocean? Who gives a shit? It'll become a
Right.
tourist attraction.
We would just like some
But
normalcy, please.
the headline above that. Headline above that. Man with metal claws gets in bar fight. Ladies and gentlemen, we have our first reference to Wolverine in the MCU.
How
Or
the hell did I
some
miss
crazy
that?
person playing Freddy Krueger in the MCU. One of the two. Some crazy dude at a bar putting knives in his hands, or it is straight up a. So, like, on that page where she's looking at, like, crazy jobs to get away, and it's the Swiss bear mascot, which, by the way, that was in Bern, Switzerland, the same place where Tony Stark met what eventually would become AIM and all that stuff. The beginning of Iron Man 3.
Yeah.
That was in Bern, Switzerland. Also, there is it looks like the village that Moon Knight woke up in the first episode as well. So there's a possible reference to Moon Knight there as well. But there was also a great little thing above when you're looking at the categories of the website. One of them was called Find Ant-Man, and everybody assumed it was like a Where's Waldo game, but you got to find Ant-Man in a picture, which I thought would be funny. But yeah. So on the side of that, under a picture of these Iron Man 3 tennis shoes ad, which, by the way, I don't know why nobody's bringing this up. They're like, oh, Iron Man 3s, they must have had, obviously there's Iron Man 1s and 2s, but you can see the arc reactor in the back of the picture. I'm like, yeah, but it's also orange, pink, and black and white. It is Ironheart colors.
Oh, interesting.
Why is nobody bringing that up? It is pure Ironheart colors.
Mm-hmm.
The shoe is white, black, purple, and orange. Ironheart colors. But directly underneath that is man with metal claws gets in bar fight. And it's just like, but again, don't you think that would be like front page news of everything? It's so, the MCU is so full of shit that's going on that is just a side article on a BuzzFeed style website.
I wonder if we're gonna see more of that type of perspective whenever Frogman shows up, and I wonder if Marvel's new gag is going to be Wolverine references in the background until he inevitably debuts somewhere. Because
Please do.
I really hope that Wolverine is not on the first class of X-Men that we see. Like I don't want to pick up with 90s X-Men. I like you got to start with the original team. At least that's how I'd want to see it, just so that you have that solid background, and then Wolverine can come later.
Yeah.
Because he's so, as a character in the comic books, he debuted in a Hulk comic, and he's everywhere. He's not, he was put on the X-Men because they didn't know what to do with him, and he was popular because of his appearances in other books. So I'm hoping that they can introduce him in a way that's similar to him being when he was introduced in Incredible Hulk, but I don't necessarily want the X-Men to show up and be like, hey, we've been primarily policing our own because you guys hate us anyway, and we have Wolverine with us. It's like I kind of want to see you need to get that goody two shoes Xavier's first class in there,
Yeah.
and then have Wolverine come in and just completely blow it up from the inside.
Yeah.
If that's the route they're gonna go.
Well, here's a question too, and I'm gonna throw it to Kel first, because you made a good point. In Incredible Hulk 181, Wolverine appeared in the back panel and then had a full issue in 182.
Yep.
First appearance of Wolverine. Is this reference a full-on reference to Wolverine showing up in the MCU, or just an Incredible Hulk Easter egg? At least at this point, let's say that.
At this point, I'm just gonna say it's an Easter egg, just because we are still not that close to having mutants in the MCU thus right now. So I think it's just an interesting little nod to the history of the Hulk. But could it mean something later? Absolutely. But for right now, I'm just gonna call it an Easter egg because I just don't. Because yeah, we do have the mutant reference in Miss Marvel, our first official calling to mutants in the MCU, but nothing else has been made known about it. So I don't see, and for the amount of prejudice that people have towards mutants in the comics, how are you going to get that much hatred towards mutants if you bring them in right now? I mean, you have no history. So right now, I'm just going to go with my gut and say it's an Easter egg. Just a
PPG,
nice little tip of the hat of the
tip of the
wing.
hat. PPG, what do you think?
I think it's an Easter egg also. I don't think that it's one of those things where it's an Easter egg. It was thrown in there for fun, and it was fun, right? Everyone's talking about it.
Yeah.
And when Wolverine inevitably debuts, it just becomes canon, right? So like it's not it's a kind of just a side load, like it's side loaded in to the point where it's both. It's an Easter egg right now, but after he shows up, yeah, it was probably him, especially with his lifespan and everything else.
That is
He
true,
could
too.
literally be doing anything in the background.
Yeah.
Well, also don't forget this. In Iron Man 1, or was it Iron Man 2? Iron Man 2. No, it was Iron Man 1. Shit, I can't think. The prototype Captain America shield. That was in Iron Man 2.
Yeah. Yeah. It was in 2.
Yep.
That was
Yeah.
meant to be nothing more than the art department throwing an Easter egg in. They didn't even ask Jon Favreau. He liked it when he saw it on set and said, "Yeah, sure, we'll put it in." It then got retconned that Howard, the whole, Howard Stark is the one who made his shield and da 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 da. That was meant to, again, that's where they retconned. Same with like Peter Parker being retconned into Iron Man 2 as the kid from the Expo. So they have that option. Any Easter egg they put in as just a nod can later be retconned without hurting any of the story. Because like you said, that little article, and if we keep seeing little things like that pop up in She-Hulk and potential other future Hulk things, we'll get to that in a little bit. They're doing it in such a brilliant way that story, if Wolverine never shows up in the MCU, it's a fun nod to the fans.
Yeah.
But when he does, oh hey, by the way, remember that article, She-Hulk, that we saw on the side of the screen? Yeah, he's been there the whole time. So you're right. It's an Easter egg and a future possible canon foundation. She-Hulk, she goes to several law offices. She gets turned down for jobs for obvious reasons because, again, the spectacle. Somebody even says it. Finally, Holloway finds her and says, "I want you to come work for me in my superhero division." And she agrees to do it very quickly because she's desperate for a job.
Yeah.
And without hearing him out completely, and that kind of bites her in the ass because he wants her to be She-Hulk at all times, which, by the way, is actually a direct flip from the comic book. So Holloway finds her in the bar as She-Hulk. She's in She-Hulk form. He's like, "I want you to come work for me. However, when you're here, you're Jennifer Walters. You're not She-Hulk. I don't want you in She-Hulk form." So it's actually a direct flip of that. Now, to play devil's advocate a little bit, there have been some people like, "Oh, see, here's another toxic male in Holloway wanting to use Jen." He's not wanting to use her as a woman. He's a corrupt businessman who sees a marketing tool and doesn't value her abilities. So it's not a man versus woman thing there. It is literally just a CEO corporate capitalist thing here. He is a heartless, money-making man who wants to use and exploit the She-Hulk for headlines and marketing. He even says, he doesn't even sugarcoat it.
No.
He tells her this is for marketing. Like, yeah, you're going to take this case or you're fired. That whole thing with Emil Blonsky, which we'll get to. But she does go work for them. Uh, but before
Before
that, I was gonna say before that,
before oh sorry.
I was gonna go ahead.
Before when she's in the bar drinking as She-Hulk and they're talking about whether or not she becomes a superhero, with the exception of what Spider-Man, the first Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire and Deadpool, they made a DC reference.
Yep.
And they're talking about the millions of dollars people make in as superheroes. She goes, well, that's only for like billionaire philanthropists and orphans for some reason. And she looks directly into the camera
Yeah.
and makes a DC reference, which I thought is pretty good considering the dumpster fire DC is right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Through that.
it's
Well,
really
don't
great
forget,
to.
Eternals made a DC reference as well.
Yeah.
When
Oh, okay.
the son of the adopted son of Phastos asked Icarus if he's Superman.
Oh, that's right. Yes, yes, yes. Okay.
It's like I don't want a cape.
But you know what's funny is that like what I find great about it is that that means DC Comics exist in the MCU,
Right.
but Marvel Comics do too.
Hmm.
Because as she's walking through the law office,
There's a guy that's got his whole walls lined with
Yeah.
them.
And
But apparently, what that is in the comics, that room exists in her law office, and what it is, it's actually the research. And that Marvel
No shit.
Comics, in the comics, Marvel Comics exist, but they are telling. They're basically, it's almost like history books. It's like illustrated history books. So instead of them being fantasized versions, they're literally just, this is what happened with the Fantastic Four and the Mole Man. This is what happened when Galactus came down. This is what happened when the X-Men fought the event. Like they're history books. And so they are legal references. They can use them as legal evidence.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And so we have that room in She-Hulk where the comic books are basically tellings of the stories of the Avengers and the heroes, and they're going to be able to use them as legal reference, which I think is great. But yeah, you're right. There was another is that, adult the orphan reference and everything else. Again, he's talking directly to a paralegal and then looks at the camera. The paralegal notices nothing. So again, is the fourth wall breaking a gamma radiation power?
If you want to bring it even back to the gamma radiation again, when she talks to Hulk about Blobsky, he goes, "Oh, that was years ago. I was a completely different person,
Yeah.
literally." And damn near looks in the camera and winks himself.
He does.
Like, yeah, that really
he
fuels
looks at the
fires
camera
that
and she
rumor.
goes, and she looks at the camera and goes, "Ha ha." I did, yeah. That reference to me.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I'm so happy they did that.
Oh yeah.
I'm so happy they did that. And again, that's the Hulk almost breaking the fourth wall, but subconsciously versus how she can do it consciously.
Yeah.
So again, there's more credence to that theory.
Well,
And if I'm right, I'm right. It's great.
Wasn't there a time in the comics though where like the Hulk like one of the side abilities of the Hulk is he has like acute cosmic awareness? Because if I remember this correctly, there a run where he like destroyed an entire universe and he had like Kirby, like a Kirby-esque outfit on. I remember it gets brought up a lot in those stupid debate videos that people do about superheroes fighting each other because they're like, "Oh, the Hulk smashed the universe," and I'm like, "But you didn't read the story on how that was possible before you just brought up that he can do it." But I remember him almost like floating around in a Kirby-esque outfit, and he actually destroyed a universe, and like he was able to travel in between universes because of this like cosmic awareness. So it makes sense if they're going to try and shoehorn that in, especially with all of the cosmic stuff that's coming down the line.
Exactly. So let's get to Emil Blonsky. I want to say this as a veteran, somebody who served in the armed forces. I was in the army. I never thought I would relate to the Abomination.
Yeah, right.
But holy fucking shit, do I relate to Emil Blonsky and the Abomination? He thought he was doing what was right. He thought he was doing what the government wanted him to do, the United States government, and then they just threw him to the wayside like trash.
Yep.
And he was damn near in tears. Now, could it be an act? Yeah, sure. But I was like, holy shit. I relate to that. I understand where he's coming from. The amount of homeless veterans out there, the amount of veterans that cannot get the proper care they deserve. You know, I'm very fortunate that I was able to medically retire before getting out, so I got my VA care. If I'd have gotten out first and tried to get my VA benefits, I'd still be fighting for him today, and I got out in 2014. My dad has been out since 1976 and is still fighting for all his. His
Sad.
brother was out. His brother got out in 72 or 74. His older brother got out in 70. It was like 72 or 74. He just got his benefits up like 2 years ago.
I got out in 2014 also, and it took until 2016 to them to even be like, oh yeah, you're here. When I moved
Yeah.
back home and applied for the VA.
It's insane. So when he said that, he gave that impassioned speech about, I thought I was the good guy. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was doing what the government, I was just being a good soldier. And then they just threw me to the wayside. I was like, oh, I'm not supposed to
See,
relate to you.
it does that for us. It does that for us, but what it does for everyone at home that who doesn't have the same experiences that you and I do is that it instills sympathy in someone that in every other time that you've seen them in the MCU thus far, with the exception of Shang-Chi, pure evil, like not a good guy. Like there's no, even his presentation before he takes the super soldier serum and then gets the Hulk dose on top of it. You know, he's this brutal, guy who's an officer's age but is a fighter and prefers to stay in the trenches because that's what he's good at and that's what he likes to do.
Yeah.
And then just as Erskine said, would happen is he gets the super soldier serum, and everything about him, that whether he's a good guy or a bad guy or even in a gray area, good becomes great and bad becomes worse. And then
Yep.
you put a Hulk on top of that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and I think that's how they're going to probably explain his appearance change also, is that if he's no longer how he looked in the Incredible Hulk, because that's him as a bad guy, if you're just like how Banner's physical appearance has changed as he's become Smart Hulk, as Blonsky finds that kind of midway point between this really dark place as Abomination and this kind of gray area, then things in what he thinks of himself start coming to the forefront, which means that he might realize he's a monster, so he starts to look like one more so than being an absolute just terror in Incredible Hulk before they break Harlem.
There's something else I want to talk about with Emil Blonsky, and you kind of brought this up earlier, CPG, about the horny progressiveness of this series. While they're not shown in this episode, in the trailers, you can see in the background during one of the interviews with Blonsky, where Jennifer Walters is there are 7 women off to the side dressed like they're in the movie Midsommar, with the white dresses and the flower halos on their heads.
Oh, his 7
his 7 soulmates he met through the pen pal program that have bought him land where he can go live with them. There's like a full polyamory storyline here. Like, he's gonna go live with these
like
women.
The harem in the Ultimate Hulk.
And you literally see them, like, you see them in the trailer in the background by the glass, and they're all like they're all like giddy. They've all got flowers in their hands, like waiting for him to get out. I'm like, can't wait to see you. Like, now, Kel, you're married. DPG, you're in a committed relationship. I have been married, currently single, ladies. Sorry, that was terrible. But
You're good.
Like,
hot local geeks and noobs in your area.
So, like, think about how we hear it all the time about women that fall in love with prisoners, or men that fall, like, there's that whole there was a whole series on Bravo, or there was one, I don't remember what channel it was on, but it was literally people that were getting engaged to people in prison, and then they would get out of prison and get married. There was a whole series about that. I think it's still a reality show, but like, what, as people in committed relationships, like, does that feel a little weird that Emil Blonsky has this? Like, here's a guy now, he has 7 women just waiting on, like, and again, in a very, like, Midsommar, almost cult-like following here. They've bought him a large piece of land.
The only reason I'm going to say no is because of Charles Manson and Charles Bronson, because they both did it multiple times.
You're absolutely
especially
right.
Charles Bronson.
And not Charles Bronson the actor, Charles Bronson the serial
inmate.
criminal inmate.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, the movie Bronson with Tom Hardy is a phenomenal film, and I recommend everybody see it because it is, to me, his best work. And Tom Hardy does great work, but that's his best work. That movie's fantastic. And by the way, the guy's name isn't Charles Bronson. He just liked the actor Charles Bronson and took the name Charles Bronson because he just liked his name. And you know how pissed off Charles Bronson was, the actor?
Well, that guy got pissed about everything, though.
Yeah, but he also escaped from everywhere. Like
Yeah.
there's still the very famous scene of all the inmates on top of a prison, like starting a riot, and they're on the top of it. That's in England, and that was led by Charles Bronson, the serial inmate. But you're right. Yeah. So like it's got very Manson vibes. That was I couldn't like my mind wouldn't go there, which I mean I just watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I don't know why my mind didn't go there. By the way, great film. Um, but like yeah, it's very Manson-esque almost. And then of course he's writing haikus, asked for
Yeah.
forgiveness, which led to him and Banner like having a pen pal situation and like, I'm literally a different person. Wink wink nudge nudge. But we've already seen that he's gonna transform, he's gonna get angry, we're gonna have issues. One of the other we let's get into your theory, CPG, because this I want to lead into Val with this. So why don't you lay out your theory?
So when she got brought in to represent Abomination, I've had several extremely like intricate theories in MCU projects in the past, which uh, Superbeard has been on the receiving end of at like anywhere between 10:30 to 2 o'clock in the morning of like, holy shit, I just watched this and I think this now. And with this, what I thought
He's so lucky I have
immediately,
insomnia.
yeah, I have insomnia too, so it's like
Yeah.
it works both ways.
Thanks, Army. Anyways.
But he pretty much like, she's going to represent him in court, and what I immediately thought to is that we know Thunderbolts is coming. It was announced at San Diego Comic-Con, and we know a pretty good idea of who the roster of the Thunderbolts is going to be. And if you notice a common theme with just about everyone, with the exception of Zemo on the Thunderbolts team, they have uh, redemption seeds planted for them for the situations they're in that make them villains. And when Abomination explains how he's very zen, which I attribute that 100% to Wong, who we know we're going to probably see in the next episode, or in at least the next two episodes, that she's going to be able to find a way to legally clear him of everything that happened in Harlem. And because of that, he will no longer have the stigma of being a wanted fugitive or an inmate or a prisoner, and will all of a sudden become available for government contracted work, aka the Thunderbolts. And she'll do it for Ghost. She'll do it for Zemo is going to be the wild card. That's why I think we're going to get Citizen V or something like that. They're going to have to conceal his identity. Yelena Belova will be cleared of anything that she might have on a record with the United States government as a Black Widow. You'll have John Walker will be cleared of his murder in broad daylight in Eastern Europe. And as they build out this roster of people, her ace in the hole, I think, will wind up being White Vision, because he's going to have to come back in some degree also, because I think that she's going to be this basically composite version of Nick Fury, where Nick Fury shook hands with a lot of government agencies and had a lot of vested personal interest in what was going on. I think she's the same way, but she'll get her hands dirty the entire time. So I think you're going to have her shaking hands with Damage Control, Shield, while working for the Department of Justice, to have her own basically Avengers to play with, the way that Nick Fury did. It almost goes it not to get into pseudo political things in the real world. Look at the world influence that Henry Kissinger had with everyone until his death, and what Dick Cheney got to do during the 2000s with George Bush. It's a similar kind of like, now she has her president or her person in power to control, and whether or not that ties in with Ross, it's got to at some point with a name like Thunderbolts, or whether it's named in his memory, since William Hurt did pass.
Yeah.
There's so many things at play, but I do think that she is setting up to be the legal grounds in which all of the Thunderbolts get off for anything that they're on the hook for currently, so they could become the stand-in Avengers.
I agree, and I think that like you said about the Thunderbolts, I think that in the wake of losing William Hurt is a very easy fix to that. Like you said, that it obviously General Ross was somebody behind Val's involvement in things. It felt very obvious from day one that like he's involved in this somehow, and she could very easily like he was the one who initially put this plan together. and she took the ball and ran with it. So we're gonna name the team Thunderbolts after him. So that's very easy to do. Like you told me that on Twitter, and it kind of blew my mind. And I'm like, I was already starting to piece that together because, like I said, when you look at the guards at the prison, this is the Cube, by the way. In the comics, it's in Nevada, but here it seems to be maybe like Death Valley or something. Um, it says DODC, Department of Damage Control, and they've got their logo on the building. But all the guards are wearing a Department of Justice logo that says Superhuman Division, something 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 something. Little like acronym on the bottom, and that's what Val is in charge of. She works for the Department of Justice. You know, technically, she works in the government. So I was already starting to piece a little bit together. When you said that, I'm like, it just like a click light bulb. And then we told Kel right before we started, and his mind was blown.
Yes.
So like now having a little bit of time to process it, Kel, like what do you think? Like what are you seeing that kind of goes in line with that over not just this episode and this series, but maybe other stuff we've seen since the introduction of Val.
I mean, it totally makes sense that that would. I English, I swear, guys. God, I'm so messed up today. But anyway, but no, the theory makes total sense to me. I really believe that CPG is on the right track of what is to come. Because even you could even say that's partially the Thunderbolts are partially inspired by Iron Man. Because I went back and I watched the Incredible Hulk today after I watched episode 2. Just because one, I haven't seen in years. One, and second, I want to get caught up on Brodsky's story because, like I said, I haven't seen it in years. So I just wanted to familiarize myself with him again to see how he was in that film compared to how he is now. And yeah, he's done a full 180. But considering that at the end of the film, that end credit scene where Tony Stark comes in the bar where Ross is drinking, and Tony says, "We're putting the team together." Well, that could have also inspired Ross to try to put his own team together. If the Avengers went down for some reason, and now they are down, they are out. So now, who's going to fill in the void? Well, Ross has probably done his research. Val has got a hold of it, or has given it to him, or given it to her. And now we're going to get the Dark Avengers or the Thunderbolts, whatever you prefer.
Well, here's the thing about Ross that we know. He doesn't like anything to not be his idea, right?
Exactly.
So, like, he was pissed at Banner, not because he became the Hulk, but because he, on his own, made advancements in that super soldier serum program without Ross. And that's why Ross was willing to use Blonsky as a test subject for something they continue to work on in secret, in the dark. And, so the fact that Tony came to him and said, "Hey, we're putting together a team under Nick," I'm sure he's like under Nick Fury. It'll be, he's like, no. I'm in charge. This is my thing. I'm going to put together my own team.
Mm-hmm.
Because he already had Blonsky. He already planned on keeping. He purposely had him arrested and not killed. Like he had the whole thing. Which, by the way, I would also like to mention because I do want to piss some people off because I'm hot today. Blonsky was not in Alaska. He has been in the Cube. He is in the Cube in California. I.e., what they said in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is not canon. Because Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. isn't canon. Okay, let's go on. Just want to throw that out there.
There was the Nick Fury's big week when they recovered that was the Avengers tie-in comic before it came out. When they recovered the destroyer armor, they take the destroyer armor to a facility where it's further tested on. They wind up replicating it for weapons, which you see in Avengers. But when they take them through the headquarters, I want to say that they had the leader. They had him in a tank with like his head had definitely grown. They had the Ironmonger chest piece, but they were trying to reverse engineer it, and they had I want to say that they had Blonsky in there as well, sedated, and also tracking the geological storms left by Thor leaving Asgard and Earth, respectively.
And that
So
should
he's
have been the
been-
cube.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what they said it was. I want to say it might have been like a shield holding facility at the time, which is very well what the cube could have started off as.
Mhm.
You know, it's not. You're looking back now, so far
Before
back
Winter
in
Soldier,
the
yeah.
universe's history. Yeah, before Winter Soldier, before the fall of Shield and everything. And there was what I can't remember where I saw it, where they were saying that even before the Hulk got put on the Avengers, that Ross tried to push Abomination on Fury and say, "Why don't you just take him and leave Banner alone?" Because he wanted to hunt him down and kill him.
Yeah.
And I think I can't remember where that was shoehorned in at. I can't remember now.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Can't think of when it was either.
I know
Was
it
that
happened.
Yeah, was that mentioned in Avenger? I don't know. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, so there's a whole lot there, and so yeah, Thunderbolts. I definitely think you're right on track with your theory. I think as far as theories goes, besides my amazing fourth wall breaking gamma radiation theory, pat myself in the back. No, seriously, I think that this Thunderbolts theory is probably the most concrete theory without it being already kind of told to us by like some kind of like rumor or like something put out there. Like as a fan theory goes, this is one of the most concrete I've ever heard. And it makes the most sense. It's not a Mephisto theory in the slightest. Which I was a victim of that. I made Mephisto theories. But that's also those theories. But where did those theories come from? They came off the rumors from supposed sources that Mephisto was in WandaVision. So,
I'd love to find the person that planted that rumor, and I would just like to beat them within an inch of their life.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you one of the people that pushed that rumor was Daniel RPK on Twitter.
Oh, I thought you were gonna just throw what's his face under the bus like immediately. Oh, I can't remember his name anymore. Kevin J. Parker.
Yeah. Oh, forget that dude. He's already he's burying himself.
Really?
Oh my god,
I have
yeah.
no idea what
he is
doing.
so hated. He is so hated right now. He sympathized with Nazis, and then when people called him out for it, he blamed them.
Of course. That's on brand.
Yeah, he and then tried to go with the whole, "Oh, I found out I'm autistic and I was bullied as a kid, so I'm the victim here." Bitch, you sympathize with Nazis, you dumb fuck.
Wow.
You are not the victim, you white heterosexual male piece of shit. It's Shang-Chi all over again. Regardless. Yeah, enough of that. I am heated. But like there's a lot to be said about what's building for the MCU. We got a lot coming up. I know next week we're going to talk about superhero fatigue with McGruber, and I can see where some people are getting it. I personally am not, but I understand it because we are getting kind of an overload right now. Because like your theory pans out, we've also got a new Avengers team coming together, possible Young Avengers. I do feel like Young Avengers and the new team will kind of clump together. I don't see Billy and Tommy actually being Avengers.
No.
I don't see them being aged up again and actually being Avengers. So I think that the new Avengers and the Young Avengers will kind of be combined into one thing. You'll have Kate Bishop on a team. You'll have America Chavez. You'll have Miss Marvel, but you'll still have Captain Marvel. You'll have Monica Rambeau, whatever name she takes. You'll have She-Hulk. You'll have, whatever. You're also going to have this side, supernatural side with Blade and Black Knight and Moon Knight and all that stuff. You've also got the cosmic stuff, all this multiversal stuff. So, yes, there's a lot going on. And I think the Thunderbolts are going to be a very interesting, almost anti-hero, which is what they were. They were villains trying to confuse people, but then they realized, oh, wait, doing good actually feels good, and I feel like a better person. And that was like the whole Mockingbird and all that stuff and in the comics. So there's a lot there as well. I want to go back a little bit in the episode before we touch on the Hulk again. There's a big thing to do with the Hulk in that. And of course, the discourse on social media has been, "Oh, this is a man-hating show." It's fucking not.
No.
And
No,
one of
not
the
at
biggest proofs of that is besides Dennis, the dickhead DA who looks as women's as it.
Oh, that pissed me off so bad.
Yeah, you've got Pug, who is the guy who brings them the welcome basket, including the map to the best place to poop.
I love that actor.
He's a phenomenal.
He was on a
I love
television
him.
show called Sirens where he was
Yep.
just an
Oh,
absolute
yes.
airhead.
Love that
It's
show.
just so good. Like,
Yeah.
He's going to be amazing. And Pug's a great character. So to see him brought to life is great. We have Holloway, who, by the way, not a good person, but he's not a misogynist either. He's just a businessman. You have one of the most important male characters right now, Jennifer's dad.
it should have been Billy Crystal. I'm just gonna say that. It should have been.
I kind of agree, but we got oh god, his name escapes me now, but he was on that show
Perfect Strangers.
Perfect Strangers, which was, I love Perfect Strangers so much. So I was happy to see him. But like when he pulled her aside and checked on her mental health,
Yes.
I absolutely fell in love with that man. Yes, there was the prototypical like stupid dad questions. Well, you're a superhero now. You must know everything about superheroes. What does Hawkeye do? Like, does he go pick up his arrows?
Yeah.
But then he's like, "Hey, I got some things I need you to do with your superhuman strengths." And he pulls her aside and said, "No, I just wanted to pull you aside. How are you? Are you okay?" Like that was so important.
Yeah.
We met Chet, the other genius in the family, and that's obviously a joke now. There was a whole big thing. People were like, "Oh, is Chet this person? Is Chet going to be a genius?" No, he's not a genius. He's a stoner who works at Best Buy. He's kind of a joke of the family. But one of the
things Banner, Sir Banner got his bongo drums, this huge bag of weed from him to calm down.
Exactly. So I love the fact that we got this wonderful male representation for her father, a wonderful father figure. Just again, almost a standard 90s and 80s TV sitcom dad, but fully invested in his daughter's mental health and who she is and cares about her. I loved every second of that. That was amazing. I also want to mention something else. There was Aunt Rebecca at the table. Now, it depends on the story you're telling. Sometimes the Hulk's mother is dead because of David Banner. Sometimes she lives. Her name is Rebecca Banner. It would be weird that Jennifer has multiple aunts named Rebecca, right? So was that woman who sat there? By the way, the only person not to say anything at the table, had no lines in that scene, just sat there next to Chet, almost scared of Jen. Like she was very like timid and quiet. Could that be Bruce's mom?
Interesting.
I don't know. I didn't think about that.
And now I have to go back and watch that scene.
Yes.
Watch how she's sitting specifically. See, here's the great thing about Insomnia. I've been able to watch the episode 4 times.
But don't you think she would have said something when Jen's dad mentioned the line, "We already had one Hulk in the family, and you didn't destroy an entire city"?
But the look on her face, she's like almost scared to talk.
Like
she's scared. She's like sitting very like statuesque, like her hand, like she's not moving. Like, it's almost like a mannequin. And so I feel like she was almost like there's a part of her scared of her son, and that's and this is, maybe I'm stretching a little bit here, but from somebody who's been through childhood trauma, and has parents who had to deal with the fact that I went through childhood trauma of a depicable scale. She may blame herself for the Hulk existing. This split personality in Bruce comes from the fact that he witnessed the violence and became a victim of the violence of her father, or his father, her husband, and she did nothing as a mother to save him. And so she's scared. And then now she has to witness her niece kind of go through it as well. And so, like I said, she's very stoic. She doesn't say anything. And again, this could be a reach. It could have just been that they just didn't have any lines for her, and she's not actually Rebecca Banner, or she's Rebecca somebody else. Who knows? But that is something, like I said, go back and watch it. You see, she's very like, her eyes are big. And it could have just been a bad extra, but it is an action. She's an actual actress, so it's not like they didn't like just have a nobody there. So like, I don't know. There could be something there.
We'll see if she shows up later on. I mean, there are post-credit scenes for every episode, right?
Yeah.
If getting back to like Bruce, also, at the end of the episode, he's off in space again, and there is this reoccurring theme, even in these very 2 episodes, of family, and that Bruce is as much as he is terrified and horrified for Jen in the first episode, is now kind of like, hey, you're a Hulk too, now you get it. And if this is leading into the rumored like World War Hulk project that's supposed to be being worked on, you know, Scar and all that plays a part in it in his own right. And if they are going the route of the Scarian Class 9 cruiser that came and picked him up is taking him back there because Scar is there. And then if at the end of like the last post credit scene for the last episode or the second to last episode is Bruce showing up with like, "Hi mom," and then like, "Here's Scar."
Here's your grandson.
And it would be a blink and you miss it cameo post credit scene, just like Hercules.
Yeah.
So it sets up more of this stuff because if World War Hulk is truly coming down the pipeline, you have to go through the World Breaker stuff, and who better to tell that story than his son, who's going to probably dealt with the repercussions of Planet Hulk, the MCU's version of Planet Hulk on Sakaar.
And also, it could be whoever he did fall in love with, and I don't. Obviously, they're not. I don't know how they're going to do it because they never showed anything on Sakaar, but he was there for 2 years. He could easily, like, when he gets back there to meet his son tells him that his mother was killed in his absence. The Grand Master kind of like, you know, whatever. I don't know how that converts to him going back to Earth and being World Breaker. Like, I don't know how, like, why is he pissed at Earth at that case? I'm sure they'll figure out a way. But speaking of that, when they zoom out, he's on the phone. They zoom out. He's at the desk. He's got his feet up on the desk, right? The air horn is in the back corner, the one he used to wake up Jen. And right in front of his feet is his Hulk manual, that big ass red binder. So if he's headed back to Sakaar to deal with his son, he might have brought that stuff in an attempt to train him how to be a Hulk. So I think that leans credit. I don't see how you make a World War Hulk movie without having the heroes send the Hulk away. But I'm sure Marvel.
I'll tell you how.
Okay.
At least my theory and how they could possibly do it. They're going to combine two stories because of where the Hulk is storyline wise now versus where he was in World War Hulk by that time. Since World War Hulk was on Sakaar stuck as the Hulk for I can't remember exactly the amount of time he was there, and came back and he was like Hulk of sound body and mind and was just a complete rage monster because he had been also betrayed by the Illuminati. There's another really important Hulk run that deals with the emergence of Smart Hulk and dividing Banner and the Hulk, and that was during Peter David's run with Doc Samson splitting Hulk and Banner. When they get to the point where they need the Hulk to come back and they explore the actual DID, they weren't really calling it back then that DID, but they'll get to it. If you combine that story with World War Hulk to trigger the World Breaker type of thing, you'll get to the point where Banner never really shook hands with the Hulk and said, okay, I'm in control now. He pushed out his alternate personality and pushed it into the dark. And the moment that personality, the Hulk, is able to come back into the shared body, all hell is going to break loose because Banner is totally okay with being shot off into space by the Avengers because it makes sense. He's dangerous. He's the Hulk. No one wants the Hulk around. But Hulk doesn't want that. Hulk just wants to be the Hulk. There's really great during the Immortal Hulk run where it shows what like the Hulk's heaven would be, and it's just wilderness and quiet and like flora and fauna. And they can combine three aspects of those three runs into something really great for World War Hulk if they really want to do that. Is you can address the DID, they're basically split without physically splitting them, and then all of a sudden, Bruce, you didn't do what you thought you did because Bruce suffers from the same thing as Reed Richards does, this hubris about him understanding everything. It's in the entire first episode when he tries to explain to Jen, who's a completely different person, hey, this is just what you're going to go through because you're Hulk now.
Yep.
So it gives this unique possibility for him to once again think that he's in control when he's not. He hasn't merged his two halves. He's pushed the mind of the Hulk out of the Hulk's own body. And
Think about that
when
too.
that comes back,
Yeah,
world
we've
breaker.
already seen some glimpses of it in the first episode when they start to fight. The first few blows he gets hit, he's still talking as Bruce. But when she hits him with that fishing cage on his head, he finally roars. They change his voice to the Hulk version of his voice. And there was other times when they were like talking and he would like kind of get angry and you'd see him kind of like, you know, like his voice. They would modify his voice a little bit. So they've already done that. I actually, as I thought about it, like I have a theory as well. We most likely wouldn't see a World War Hulk movie until at least Phase 7. I don't think we'll get it before Phase 7. What if he goes to Sakaar, and through other series or movies, they tell the story of him dealing with his son. He comes back. His son becomes an Avenger, maybe even on a Thunderbolts or something. But during Kang Dynasty and or Secret Wars, his son ends up dying, and Bruce blames the Avengers for putting him there. Like he brings him back not to make him an Avenger. He sees that Jennifer is able to have her own life. He sees that Jennifer doesn't have to necessarily be a superhero. She can be a lawyer, and so he comes to the realization that maybe he doesn't have to. He can help if it's necessary and if he wants to help, but he doesn't have to be a hero. But in the wake of everything going on, the Avengers kind of force him to bring his son in. His son dies instead of his wife dying. And that's the trigger. Like, what if during Secret War his son dies and that triggers him? He leaves at the end of Secret War. He's like, no, fuck you guys. Like, this is bullshit. My son died and it's your fault. And he leaves, but then he comes back as World Breaker Hulk. That would be a way to do it.
Yeah,
it definitely would string everything together. It'd be very interesting to see that go down. I'm the more that the possibilities of what a World War Hulk movie could be like come to the forefront, the more that I'm like, can you just give me this movie?
yeah.
But yeah,
I think that's going to be really cool. So we've got a lot coming up with this series. I think we've kind of learned to, like, we know Wong will either be in the next episode or the episode after. I think it'll be the next episode because of the viral clip getting released of them fighting. So she'll have to call him in on this. I think Wong is the multiverse saga's version of Nick Fury. We've seen him everywhere. We see him kind of connecting everything. He is the, for lack of a better term, liaison for the Avengers. And we know that Nick Fury is older now. We saw that in a clips from Secret Invasion. I think that Nick Fury's character will be killed off in Secret Invasion, or at least gone. Like, I'm done. I'm out. I'm out of here. I mean, obviously, Samuel L. Jackson. I mean, getting up there in age, he can only act for so long. You can't put another 10 years on this man. So I think that Wong will be the new Nick Fury, the new connecting thread, the new, thing. But we've still got, like we said, we got Frogman coming up, which I think is going to be fascinating. I cannot wait for this just ridiculous fucking character. And the costume is so on point.
Yes.
We've got the Wrecking Crew coming.
Yeah, that I'm very much in for that. I can't wait.
And
to see
that
how
I'm actually happy. I'm happy they didn't go the ridiculous costume route with.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm happy that they look like they're just guys in jumpsuits, like construction jumpsuits, but with Asgardian tech, which is what their powers come from in the comics. They get their weapons are Asgardian or magically enchanted weapons. So we're gonna see that. Obviously more Titania. There's gonna be other ones. We've seen her defending other people, and of course we're getting Daredevil. Matt Murdock will be coming in. Now, another thing these stupid toxic dude bros are bitching about is that they've already said that Daredevil will be brought in the scheme of the lighthearted show that this is. He will fit that narrative. Oh, but he's a dark and brooding character. You know that Frank Miller wasn't the only person to write a Daredevil comic, right? You know that
That's
Netflix is not the only representation of Daredevil, right? I love that people keep throwing up that clip where he wears that. It's a Christmas party and he's got that sweater on that says "I am not Daredevil." He makes quips with Spider-Man all the fucking time. Like the Kevin Smith run on Daredevil is fantastic and dark, and yet still quippy and still like has its moments of lightheartedness. It's not. Charlie Cox made it pretty clear when he talked about it that his return to Daredevil is, we appreciate what we got in the Netflix shows, but we're not going to pay attention to that. We're going to go a new route, and I'm going to be born again. And then what do we find out? The series is called Born Again. What is the most important? What is one of the most important comic book runs in Daredevil's life? Born Again. And in that, they have the option to rebuild the character to fit the MCU without taking anything away from the character.
One of the things about, sorry, but
no, I was gonna say we're getting the yellow costume too. Like that's great.
Yeah, which I can't wait for. Yeah, but the thing that I keep laughing with these guys, or these people on the internet rather, that just, we had a dark, serious, brooding Daredevil series and shows, and we don't want. I was like, so they're like, there wasn't injected crazy humor or any humorous notes that were in any of the Daredevil shows. I was like, are you talking about like you just ignored Nelson and Murdoch avocados at law for like like I've seen like people have money clips with that on it, like have had business cards made. Like a friend of the CBJs and I's who's works in there, I always make the joke avocados at law. And it's not like like it was completely devoid of humor, with the exception, I would say, of Frank Miller's run, whether it's Kevin Smith, Diggle, or Wade, or even Bendis. There is humor in Daredevil. There's a lot of stuff in there that makes it lighthearted. Like Spider-Man has come into his own apartment to Daredevil drinking milk out of his fridge. It's those things do happen. And if that happens in the show in any sort of like in any sort of capacity, this isn't a deviation. This isn't him getting castrated on film. This isn't like anything. This is just an aspect of the character that that wasn't explored in the last one, even to its full potential that it could be. Every single one of these shows is a different run of a character, just like comic books. The feel of the Falcon and Winter Soldier, and the way that the show itself is written, with the political undertones and everything that are very much there, whether or not people want to fully admit it. Yeah. You might not get that in the movie because it's being directed by somebody else. It's being written by different people, so it's almost like you're changing artists and you're changing writers, but the characters stay the same. And you're going to have different highlights, different characters. The way that Dan Slott wrote Spider-Man is not the same way that Bendis did. Yep. So that's the way that these different adaptations, or these different appearances, need to be treated. It's very much the same thing. It's an overall connected story, but all the tie-in issues are all written by those different creative teams. And you see it time and time again. As great as the overarching story is, there's always those tie-ins that are great because they're done by the people who are actually working on those books to tie those stories together. Yeah. So I think that's how that should be treated. And I think that we're going to get a pretty humorous moment with Daredevil, because I think that, as Frogman makes himself known, I think when she goes to investigate it, maybe after hours, he gets brutally beat down by Daredevil, and then he says something about frogs and lily pads.
I think so. Kel, I'd like to get your thought on kind of what's coming up with the show. We're going to get a lot of these very obscure characters we've seen from the trailers, that there's like a couple, like magical characters, and like one of the Judge Price ends up being like what looks like an Asgardian elf.
Yeah.
And so there's all kinds of stuff coming up. Like, we've got 2 episodes now. We've kind of established, the origin is out of the way, and even the origin of now her new law job is out of the way with this episode. We're going to really start seeing court cases. We're going to really start seeing more law stuff. What are you kind of expect? We've got 7 episodes to go, man. Now, I will say, before you jump on, this episode, unlike the first one, I felt the first one felt like an hour in the best way possible. It didn't feel like a 35-minute episode. I felt like we got a lot, but it didn't feel cramped. This one was only 22 minutes or 23 minutes, and it felt like 15.
Yeah.
When the credits started rolling, I was like, wait, what, already? And part of me was like, maybe it's because I haven't slept in 48 hours. Maybe I'm just like weird with time. But watching it again, I'm like, no, this is really fast. I don't think pacing is an issue. It didn't feel rushed again. It just felt like it was over too soon. But that being said, we've got 7 more episodes to go. Kel, what are you kind of expecting to see? What are you wanting to see?
Well,
Ooh, excuse me.
I really don't have an idea of what we're going to see. It's definitely gonna be interesting because uh Holloway, he was saying that, if you don't take the Brodsky case, then you don't have a job here. So it seems like that would be priority number one, to get all those facts straight. So I don't think we'll see like that as Guardian Elf judge until later on. Maybe I would say maybe episode 5, maybe 6, maybe. I'm not sure. Don't have, but yeah, I definitely think for episode 3, she's gonna do, pardon the pun, damage control on Brodsky's escape when the viral Vera went out from where he would Abomination was fighting Wong in Shang-Chi. So, she's gonna do damage control for that, I feel, in the next episode. But also, like we said, probably try to bring in Wong to get the explanation of what happened. Why was Abomination fighting someone uh, when he's supposed to be in prison? So we're gonna get the explanation for that, I feel, probably in the next episode. But as far as what to expect, I really don't know, because the show is just so different from anything we've had thus far in the MCU, which is a good thing. Everybody was saying, we need some variety, we need different styles of movies and shows, and now we have it. And I'm enjoying it. I did not think I would like Miss Marvel as much as I did, but it was a really good, well written show, I thought. And yeah, it was more directed and styled for like a early 2000s Disney Channel show. That was just the way it was presented, but the storytelling is very Marvel based. But it's just went, how would a teenager deal with having mystical powers all of a sudden from out of nowhere?
I
But
agree.
yeah, and as far as like, I'm not sure how the Wrecking Crew is going to fit in, but like we discussed last week, the Wrecking Crew is just a gang of hired thugs with supernatural abilities and weapons.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see who wants to um, come in to try to take out She-Hulk.
So
And
I've looked up some of the people that we're gonna see, kind of give names to people. So Frogman's gonna actually be called Leapfrog, which actually makes sense because that's the son of Frogman. Leapfrog.
okay,
We're gonna get Madison. Madison is a victim of magic who ends up becoming a foil for Wong. He is somebody who, as a victim of magic, ends up learning magic. We're gonna get a magician named Donnie Blaze, which I believe that person's stage name is reference to both Johnny Blaze and Danny Ketch. I believe that he is going to take his name from seeing maybe Johnny Blaze do some stunts or something that seem to be otherworldly stunts that he shouldn't survive. But I do believe that is a reference to Ghost Rider, but we'll have to wait and see that. We're also going to get Porcupine. And that's a character that I say that and people are like, who the fuck are you talking about? He is a weapons designer who makes himself a battle suit that looks like a porcupine. And then, of course, we're getting the Wrecking Crew. And there are some others that are in unnamed roles as of yet. But yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting. I'd also like to mention that the first 4 episodes and the last 2 episodes are all directed by Kat Corio, and then episode 5 through 7 are done by Anu Valia. So 5, 6, and 7 might feel a little bit different because, like you were talking about, how different creators and different directors and different writers can give you a different feel. But it also looks like the first 2 episodes and the last episode were written by Jessica Gao, and then every episode from 3 to 8 are all written by different people.
Hmm.
So we could get
Interesting.
some very interesting storytelling coming up. And this is going to be one of the first ones, I think, and I'll have to double check, but I feel like all the other series we've gotten, from WandaVision to Miss Marvel, have had a solid writing and team, and maybe not directing team. Like, they might have rotated directors, but they've had a singular writing team for every episode. So the fact that we're getting so many different writers for this is very interesting.
I wonder if they're going the route of every episode being somewhat based on a different legal drama,
Possibly.
where you
Yeah.
have like an episode where if it require, I mean, as a lawyer doesn't really, but like you have one that's more like Law and Order centered, and one that's maybe more of a courtroom exclusive, type of deal. I would absolutely like die if they did like a Judge Judy type of episode or whatever, and it's like Howard the Duck is suing like Dupe or something like that.
Yeah.
Howard the Duck, I think, is going to be a cameo we're going to get, because he hasn't shown up in quite anything yet, and he was last seen during the battle for Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
he's
he
here.
might still be on Earth, yeah.
And who knows,
Um,
maybe your Judge Judy theory might be why that Asgardian elf is a judge.
Yeah.
Could be. Could be. So like that, there's a scene in the trailer where a magician just appears. I'm assuming that's Donnie Blaze. There's a lot of things coming up. We're gonna get a lot of obscure characters. We're gonna get a lot of fresh feels, obviously, from the show, because considering it is different writers. And before anybody bitches about, oh, it's gonna ruin the flow of the show, you know how many shows out there have different writers episode to episode, and you'll never know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, so come on, like, calm down. I just feel like we're going to get, like, there are references to Ally McBeal so far in every episode. In fact, Ally McBeal was playing in the bar on the
Mhm.
TV above the bartender's head.
Yeah.
There was an Ally McBeal thing on her desk, or on her shelf in the first episode, and that's a great representation. But I think you're going to lean on your Boston Legals, your Ally McBeals, your Murphy Browns, your stuff like that, and take that and mix it with these just ridiculous D-list characters from a bygone time of ridiculousness in comics. Again, a guy dressed as a fucking frog. You have a villain,
Yeah.
a villain named Porcupine. This construction crew that uses like standard construction tools that have been enchanted to become the wrecking crew. And there's so many things, like and of course Titania is also. I kind of want Titania to show up. She didn't show up in this episode, but I want her to kind of, like, every episode that there's a case, whether she shows up in the courtroom or she shows up outside, I want her to just show up, get beat up within 30 seconds, and be gone. Because that happened in the comics all the time.
Yeah, that's the
She
cornerstone of
like
her character. Yeah.
it would literally happen. Like, she'd be like, Nikki, the paralegal, would be like Jen would be in the middle of questioning a person and be like, Jen, Titania's outside. She's like, can I have a 5-minute recess, please? Go outside, beat the shit out of Titania, and then go back inside, brush herself off, and like, okay, sorry, can we continue? Like, that happened all the time in the comics. So that's what I don't want Titania to be a main villain. I want her to be that.
Yeah.
I want her to be this influencer that keeps attacking Jen to try to get clout, to try to get clicks, and then just gets her ass beat all the time. That's all I want. That's all I want.
Going back to speaking about Titania, I wanted to go back and talk about at the beginning of the episode where it said why she broke into the courtroom in the first episode. Because in the very first of the second episode, you had different like news channels talking about what happened, and apparently Titania was in court she was in traffic court and didn't agree with what the judge said, and then she just rampaged through the courthouse.
Yeah,
And
she had
then,
a mental lapse. I think
yeah,
is what it said, or something like that.
yeah, it was like a mental lapse that would. It was caused by a disagreement, and she had low blood sugar, which led to a mental collapse at that moment.
It was very
Fantastic.
much the J. Kevin Parker apology video.
Yeah.
It was very much just a standard social media apology video that means absolutely nothing. It was her representative being like, "Oh, she had low blood sugar and she had a bit of a mental break because she was in a very stressful situation, and her life is tough as a super influencer and blah 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 blah."
Yeah.
So yeah, I want her to just come in, get her ass beat, and be done. Like, I don't want her to be anything more than that.
There's a cool thing that they have there, and this will kind of be my last thing because I'm running out of time. But you're now seeing the repercussions of these people in universe on a very small street level compared to what we've seen in the past. So you've seen our heroes inspire their villains. We've seen the worldwide acclaim and what being an Avenger does and doesn't get you. But with outside of the Netflix stuff, which is decanonized in its own way, we're now seeing that if you get superpowers and you want to be an influencer, you can do that. It's grounding. It's doing something that Marvel does very, very well. Marvel doesn't do very well in the comic books, which is what Marvel does very well in the comic books. DC doesn't do it very well. That makes their characters ultimately way more relatable.
Right.
And it's like, you can't tell me that if you're a mega influencer, that if you had the ability to get superpowers, you're not going to go for it, because it will absolutely boost your platform.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great place to leave off here for the podcast. Because that's exactly what it would be like. You know that if Marvel's always like, Peter Parker took pictures of himself as a way to make ends meet.
Yeah.
Like, he was technically an influencer before that was even a thing. So, yeah, She-Hulk. It's been a great series thus far. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I cannot wait to see where it goes from here. CPG, thank you so much for joining us and putting your life on the line with Roxy. I love her. Please tell her I love her. I'm so sorry. I love her. And Kel, as always, thank you so much for checking it out. Next week, we should be having McGruber on, and we're going to have a very good discussion about superhero fatigue, which is obviously something that we're going to have to deal with eventually. So we're going to have that discussion as well. We'll have that next week. And maybe, just maybe, I might have some news coming up. We'll see how things go. So on that note, I want to thank everybody for hanging out. Again, if you're following us on Twitch, please hit that follow button. If you could subscribe, I greatly appreciate it. If you're on YouTube, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. If you're on Truvo, please follow there. Also, subscriptions there always start at $1.99, so they're a little bit cheaper. And also, if you're on Facebook, please hit that thumbs up button. Follow us there on Facebook as well, and you can post whatever you want, and it's something we can maybe talk about. So thanks to everybody for coming in. Thank you guys, and we will see you soon.